Mr. Beast says he was shocked to learn there was no way to pay extra for child labor-free cocoa in West Africa. I asked everyone involved in sourcing cocoa, is there any way I can pay a premium and not have little kids work on my farm? And it literally didn't exist. I was just so mind blown, and it was so frustrating because not only did it not exist, no one really seemed to even think it needed to exist. I was like, these are kids, you have no issue making billions of dollars in profit while little kids are working on the farms. It was a very weird thing. Weird if you're retarded, I guess? Like, I thought this was just common knowledge.
Everyone, you know, that does all the sourcing for cacao, and I was like, so is there any way I can pay a premium and not have little kids work on my farms? And it literally didn't exist. And I was just so mind blown. And it really was frustrating because it's just like, it's not even, did it not exist? Like, no one really seemed to like, even think it needed to exist. I was like, you guys, like, these are kids. Like, you have no issue making billions of dollars in profit on little kids working on the farms. It was like a very weird thing. So
that's crazy. So that's most chocolate?
Well, majority of the world's cacao, as you saw, comes from West Africa. So, I mean,
holy shit, man.
Yeah, I know. And so that's what I mean, I'm thousands. Everyone, you know.
The more child deaths that occur from harvesting the cocoa, the sweeter the chocolate. But in all actuality, like, how the fuck do you not know that child labor is typically used almost everywhere in the world? Even in our first world countries, like, people used to get jobs when they were, like, 14. That used to be I had a job when I was 15. I was just like, I don't understand. Very, very crazy thing to state, and I think this person also put it pretty decently. Dr. Drunken Kobold, I don't know who that is. He said, I hate how no one understands how the world works, and having reality smack them in the face doesn't have them update prior. There are hundreds of foundational things that need to happen before their society even functions without child labor and the like. Everyone there is a slave to their own families. If someone bettered themselves, farm that makes great money because they invest in fertilizer, which is not common, they would be expected to give everything away to their extended family where it will be squandered. No money left to buy fertilizer for the next year. That's just one of the hundreds of things that have to change. And it's not happening without colonization and dictatorial control for 5+ generations at least. High probability control would have to be indefinite. They cannot understand your world or accept your values any more than you can do with theirs. And him saying this kind of reminds me of, like, when we think about, like, old peasantry and serfdom in Europe, that's essentially what he's talking about, right? Like, a king rules similarly to a dictator. And yes, some people lived in incredible poverty, but we also had the ability to make non-impoverished areas instead of everyone living that way. It might have sucked, but that's how progress was made. And some of these people are living in societies that have not caught up to the progress of even, like, the serfdom era. And so they need to make these societal progresses before they can understand child labor bad. Because for them, child labor not bad, child labor necessary to survive. It's laughable that the guy believes it'll only take 5 generations. Well, it only takes about 3 to 5 generations to fully indoctrinate into an ideology, which is why we have the issues with communism we're having right now.
If they don't make the kids
it's very
work
possible.
on the farm.
Even if you go back to, like, the early, you know, cowboy times, when was that? Like, fucking mid-late 1800s, maybe even early 1900s to a degree, depending on where in the country you were. In cowboy times, people were still dying of, like, tuberculosis. People had to fend for themselves. There were shops, but they were very not stocked like our grocery stores of today. You had a family farm, and as a child, you worked on that fucking family farm to provide for your family. Fans of Apostle Kathryn Krick from 5F Church in Los Angeles react as they meet her and receive her new book, Ignite Revival. Can women even be apostles? And I feel like if you call yourself an apostle, that's like a false idol kind of thing, right? Like,
because you've been a
you're putting yourself on a pedestal that you have, like, no business being on, right? Am I crazy? Apostle, what in the blasphemy? Yeah, I was like, that's kind of weird. What? Why do we allow women?
Every person to be broken off of the Bible in Jesus' name.
What the fuck was was that? Why did she just have a seizure? God's power is not limited to the four walls of a church. Well, if God causes me to have a seizure, I'm gonna say fuck God, because like, what? I think you're seeing in real time why women are like the best foot soldiers for horrendous ideology. Because like that was some decent acting, right? That was some decent acting.
Increasing your life so powerfully.
I think that you have no reason to react like this unless literally the reincarnation of Jesus Christ is floating in front of you. Like that would make sense to react this way in that instance. But otherwise, like, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck? Women are the most susceptible to brainwashing and hypnosis. Thanks, I hate it, man. Why do retards go along with this shit? It's part of their flock. You just don't get it. Lady, you're one golden calf away from Moses breaking the 10 Commandments over your head. Jesus Christ. Like, why are they all seizuring? I don't get it.
I ministered in Texas more than any state in America. I think by far, because of the hunger.
Can we just take a second? She said because of the hunger. To a room of mostly overweight people. Like, come on, lady.
By far, because of the hunger.
Aw, what a progressive! She makes the black women have seizures too!
Everything from the past to be gone.
Was this a design choice to not have her overall straps over her shoulders, or did she just get so fat that she couldn't fit into these pants anymore? In Orthodox Russian church, they believe if somebody gets a vision of angels / Jesus, it's more probable that you got possessed by a demon than you actually got visions. I feel like that is the healthy amount of skepticism to have, right? Like, you'd have to prove it was not a demon trying to trick you into doing its bidding instead of everyone just being like, oh my god, you're so holy now, you can speak with the Lord.
All autoimmune diseases will be required from disease. Your mind be totally filled now. Amen.
I've grown up with like very religious Catholics my entire life. And so like seeing these people react in like crying breakdowns and performative seizures literally makes no sense to me. Because, like, I've seen the devout religious. They don't act like this. What the fuck is happening? This is a cult? Yeah, that's what it feels like, dude. They're even drinking fucking Fiji water, bro. That's like some expensive-ass tap water. This guy in the red shirt. Look at his fucking expression. He is so done with her shit. He's just like, I am so fucking tired of this nonsense, but that pussy be grippy though. That's a pretty dress. Something kingdom of heaven? Something come near? What? Crispy, thank you. Your grandpa went on missions to Ghana, and he said one day he had a vision that he was teaching under a tree. The next day it happened. You believe it, since it would mean God was lending him to it. I've had those dreams before, where, like, it's a dream that feels intensely real. Like, it feels like it's not a dream, and I'm actually, like, living through whatever's happening. And then, like, something happens that makes the dream me think something is off here. Right? Like, I can't think of any off the top of my head that I've had before, but let's say, like, I had, a guy that I was, like, crushing on, right? And I wanted to, like, go to the Apple Bapples with him. My dream would basically, like, recreate this, but it wouldn't feel like a dream. So it wouldn't feel like a wishful thinking kind of thing. And then, like, the next week, he would ask me out to the restaurant that we were at in my dream. And I was like, that's kind of fucking weird. It's happened with like a car accident at one point as well, where like I was riding my scooter outside in my dream, and there were these two cars with very specific cars that crashed in front of me in the street, and I was the only one there, so I had to call 911. And then this happened in person like several months later, and I was like, that's really fucking weird. That's really strange. My dreams go hard, dude. You've got a lot of deja vu and premonition has happened a lot. Yeah, it's just like, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's probably why I believe in ghosts. You've had those dreams before? Yeah, it's weird. One of your favorite ambient albums talk about lucid dreams. Interesting. EMT0096, is that the name of the album? She has the visions. They're not exactly common. They're not exactly frequent. They're not something I can control. It's just happened before. And I'm like, that's fucking weird. What a coinky dink. Deja vu sucks. You always expect something terrible is about to happen. I get deja vu a lot more often because it's like I'll have a dream of like talking to my mods about something that needs to be dealt with, or talking about a topic with stream chat, and then that topic will come up like in a later stream, or like I'll have to talk to my mods about that thing later, and I'm like, didn't we already do this? Like, I feel like we've had this conversation, and everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about, Kirsche? No, we haven't. I was like, what the fuck? Dang, even the mods are working hard in the dreams. I know. It's not uncommon for you to dream about shit you have to do because it's in your head. Yeah. It's very true. Very true. Which is why, like, whenever I had those dreams in the past that were like, this feels real, but it's not, right? It's a dream. And then when something happened, I'm just like, what the fuck? How did that, what? Did I think I had to do this? Did I think it into reality? I don't understand. This woman looks and sounds so insufferable to be around. Like, if I had to be sitting in the same room as a woman who was like, yes, praise God, Jesus, I'd be like, this is exactly why I'm agnostic. It's you. You caused this. I'm all for revival, and I'm glad these people are finding some joy. However, I don't believe too much in the be healed kind of stuff. I think Jesus does work miracles behind the scenes, but I don't think he makes spectacles of it. Just my opinion. To be fair, a lot of the healing that was talked about in the Bible was a spectacle, right? Like there was people watching him like heal the blind and shit. So like, I don't know how much you can say that. However, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm glad these people are finding some joy, because like this kind of performative thing, I think, is how cults are born. Yes, you should have joy and whimsy in your life, but this is not joy and whimsy. This is weird cult shit. So, Trigger Point tagged me that North Korea might have actually shut down the Conspiracy stream.
Flashback.
Kirsche is a criminal. It's not intentional.
It's not intentional. My mom just bad lady.
Her mom's words are crazy. It gets so much worse. Oh my god.
It builds character, doesn't it, Kirsche? The national puff jacket? Yeah.
I have very big character.
I don't know whose internet is dying, but someone is dying. Chat, are you still here? Is it my internet? Am I dying? Oh god, we good? Okay, thank you, YouTube. All of my chats were frozen, so I was like, I don't know. Okay, my Twitch chat is dead. My Kick chat is dead. I don't see anyone typing in Twitch or Kick. So, there's that. My OBS is dying. Okay, alright, still live, Foxwoman. Stream is fine, okay? Cha-Cha and Alana, red squaring. I just started red squaring, I guess. YouTube's the last man standing. I'm glad you guys can hear me, because my OBS thinks that I am dead. I don't know what's happening. This is actually hilarious if you think about it. As it is our conspiracy stream that keeps getting taken down. Every time we go into a different conspiracy, they have to figure out a new tactic to shut us down, man. They can't let us talk truth to power.
End of flashback.
I just assumed that it was like China attacking our grid system, because that's what China does when they're outed for their spy techniques. But this said, here's what appears to be a strategic intelligence analyst on China and North Korean strategic assessments, admitting that presidential daily briefings have been massaged to avoid links to the election. And I feel like, right, like we've been talking about how Trump trusts the wrong people since his first presidency, and how, like, he absolutely needs to gut the intelligence community because all they do is work against him. And if you're working against the president of the United States, you're basically committing treason. What are you doing? Like, you cannot like him. You cannot like him, and if you want to keep your job, you have to do what the administration wants. This is all just insanely treasonous behavior. It says, from redacted, NSA redacted, USA Gov redacted, Friday, November 20th, 2020. Redacted, NSA redacted, US Gov redacted, NSA redacted, USA Gov. It's like, it's your favorite part of leaks, right? When everything's just fucking redacted. It just says USA Gov and NSA a bunch of times with redacted shit. Subject, notes the election threat 45-day ICA China section drafting team, classification redacted. All redacted has heard/received nothing. We've deliberately massaged our one pending PDB to avoid any direct links to the election. The massive report we've been waiting on has been chopped up into 13 reports that likely will not get out until late next week. Many/all of them will be cross-posted into redacted or downgraded into redacted so that can be more easily incorporated into the 45-day piece if needed. And then more redacted stuff down here, strategic intelligence analyst, redacted China and North Korea strategic assessments. IC email redacted? I don't even know what that is. More redacted stuff, Thursday, November 19th, all of the redacted USA Gov, NSA nonsense down there. I don't like that these are called declassified when they have so much redacted, kind of like this first commenter person is saying. And then also, if these are people who were working against the president, his administration, and thus the will of the American people, why are their names redacted? They do not deserve the anonymity. They should be well known to all of us who is committing treason. Classification redacted, classified by redacted, derived from redacted, declassify on redacted. I think I mentioned to you before that there's some pending redacted that makes it clear China has been caught conducting election influence. At least that's how it was described to us. Long sentence redacted. But as you scroll up, note that NSA has deliberately massaged our one pending PDB to avoid any direct links to the election. While this is important for your report, I'm sure, it also has the potential to be a near-term issue that we will need to draw attention to. This is a really good example, but far from the only one, of what I've been raising since this summer. That the IC is deliberately avoiding mentioning a connection to the elections for non-substantive reasons. Obviously, since the redacted isn't released yet, they're holding it until next week. There isn't a PDB, so maybe it won't end up being an issue. But this is a highly irregular way to do things, especially as someone trying to raise tradecraft and substantive objections to the mainline analysis and isn't getting our work incorporated or even mentioned. I like how this person's, like, issue with redacting that China was meddling in our elections was that their work wouldn't be incorporated or mentioned. I feel like there might be a bit more pressing reason to release the information about Chinese meddling, ? Like, I don't know, man. But, this guy posted another one of the CIA note stuff, and there's another one here. Internal emails reveal how officials fought to downplay China wanting Trump to lose in 2020. And this is another bunch of redacted stuff. Thanks for the response. Much of your new suggested language is fine, but it doesn't actually address our concern about redacted. Yes, the redacted is dated, that's the point. We disagree with your comment on parallelism. The language on Russia and Iran includes preferences because it describes effort to support or denigrate one candidate over the other. The graphic is about the election, so it seems odd to exclude IC-coordinated language on Beijing's view of it. I also asked the redacted analyst to add language on aims or preferences to the extent that they have anything to say there. I also think there's a contradiction in your suggestion. You say definitively at the beginning that Beijing isn't trying to sway the outcome, and then later included our language saying that redacted. So here's a counter proposal to try and find common ground. Redacted, we assess that China prefers that the president does not win the re-election, But we have redacted, alternatively, we assess that China is not at this time trying to influence the outcome of the presidential election in favor of one candidate or another. Redacted in this assessment because it is based on redacted. We assess Beijing uses extensive lobbying, economic measures, information derived from computer network exploitation, and increasingly strident rhetoric to redacted press U.S. officials and federal and local candidates to support China's positions and perspectives. I think that's really funny that they're saying, let's find some common ground. We'll take out the wording about China trying to influence the outcome of the election and trade it with other wording that says the exact same thing, but most people will be too dumb to understand that. I can only imagine leftists glomming on to this, like, alternatively, we assess that China is not at this time trying to influence, saying that, like, oh, look, they said that they weren't, when it's actually just them trying to change wording to make common ground with the people who don't want to mention China in the report at all. A little nuts. Why would Trump ask for 600,000 more Chinese in America after this? I really hope that he doesn't actually do that Chinese visa thing, because that was also a really fucking stupid thing for him to say. Beijing also continues to criticize U.S. policies, politicians, and perceived critics to shape a political and social environment in the U.S. that reflects China's positions and perspectives and defend against perceived attacks by the U.S. China has been expanding its broad whole-of-government redacted influence efforts ahead of November 2020 to shape the policy environment in the United States and to pressure political figures at every level of government, efforts which we assess could be used to influence the 2020 election. However, we assess at this time China probably judges the risk of being caught interfering in the U.S. election outweighs any potential gains. I don't know how much of this declassified by President Trump on July 3rd, 2026. I was gonna say, I don't know how much of this he knew when he said his, like, 600,000 Chinese student visas thing. Because it's like, if he knew this and he still said it, what the fuck, brother? What the fuck? If he didn't know this, hopefully he completely reneges on that and is like, no, 0 student visas. If he did, likely optics. I don't know. It could have been like, I don't like using the trust the plan rhetoric, but it could have been a fake out where he said that to appease China in the like global stage while asking them for concessions behind the curtain. But I don't really care because I don't want 600,000 more Chinese student visas. And then this other CIA note here, sensitive PRC reporting from 2018 to 2020. Redacted, the following contains portions of sensitive reporting that was disseminated between 2018 and 2020 related to the People's Republic of China. This is not a comprehensive synopsis or summary of all reporting disseminated during that time period. In mid-2018, the Chinese Communist Party's policy was to leverage all domestic and foreign elements that were opposed to the U.S. president in an effort to reduce the U.S. president's votes and make him resign or prevent his re-election. Redacted. Also, in mid-2018, China was working to influence the results of the U.S. midterm elections and later the results of the 2020 U.S. presidential elections. As a part of this campaign, China was analyzing the 2016 U.S. presidential elections and identifying U.S. states who voted for the U.S. president. The Chinese would then identify sectors within these states that voted to support the U.S. president's political party and would attempt to make these sectors experience negative financial consequences by levying tariffs on exports to China from those sectors. The Chinese hoped that these measures would induce representatives from these sectors to lobby the U.S. president. So once again, Trump was right with his retaliatory tariffs, and the left just hates all of us. That's kind of funny. As of mid-2018, the PRC's ultimate goal with regard to the U.S. elections was for the U.S. president not to be re-elected. China found the uncertainty of the U.S. administration unsettling. I feel like if you have even half a brain cell rattling around in your head, the fact that a de facto enemy of America, China, is terrified of someone like Trump or whoever's after Trump becoming president, should that not be the person you vote for? Should you not want your enemies to quake in fear and feel the need to dispense propaganda? Is that not the kind of leader you would want? That seems crazy to me. Sadly, nothing will be done about this, by the way. Yeah, I don't feel like anyone who assisted China or swept all of this China stuff under the rug will face any consequences. So, like, it's nice to know the information for once and for all because we have so many people who are just liars. But the information is kind of worthless without any repercussions to the people who are involved in this. Separately, the Chinese government used a number of means to exert influence over individuals it believed would speak on behalf of Chinese interests with senior U.S. officials. China regularly extended invitations to influential U.S. individuals to travel to China for speaking engagements, for which they were paid significant speaking fees, along with first-class travel and accommodations. I like how, within the first, 30 seconds of Hassan's China trip videos, all of us were like, yeah, he got paid to do this. This was effective particularly with think tank officials, academics, and former U.S. government employees. The goal of these activities was to get either U.S. corporations or U.S. individuals hooked on China. Bro, we couldn't even stay hooked on phonics. You think you're gonna get people hooked on China? By doing so, the Chinese relied on hitting these entities in the wallet to force them to talk with the US president about tariffs. You know, if leftists didn't hate our country, I would say they probably feel pretty stupid right now for overturning Trump's tariffs and doing exactly what China wanted, but they're probably happy about that. Here's another part of it from Benny Johnson, an FBI agent claiming that they're running a shadow government. Someone named Nikki L. Flores, saying, I'm basically running a shadow government across the FBI at this point. Seriously, we're pushing out a note today to all FOs that all election-related IIRs must come through FITF and HQ. So once again, we have a name to put to this one. This woman is saying this legitimately. Like, when I say I'm the shadow government of the VTubing community, that's obviously a joke because I've gotten people to play video games that have been very popular and been very good for them, both financially and views-wise. Been massive growth. So, I said that as a joke. This is an FBI agent. This is not a joke. Just remember, everyone, that Lindsey Graham was the problem and not all the other fucks in the government enriching themselves with China money while selling us out. There's a lot of problems, man. See, why can't that guy be yeah, this woman should face severe fucking repercussions for undermining the US government and for treason. That's insanity. And I'm sure someone's gonna be like, Kirsche, treason's very specific under the law, you have to meet X. I don't fucking care. Fucking change it then, you semantic bitch. Cause, we're not gonna get anywhere if we don't start throwing these people in jail. President Trump's newly declassified election documents show Venezuela had compromised election infrastructure dating back to 2004. This is the summary of select intelligence reporting from 2004 to 2020 on Venezuela's electronic voting manipulation capability. Intelligence community reporting from 2004 to 2020 documented persistent concerns about Venezuelan government manipulation of electronic voting systems and the potential national security implications for U.S. election infrastructure. The intelligence established that Venezuelan government officials developed sustained interest and likely some capability in manipulating electronic voting systems, including Smartmatic technology, to influence electoral outcomes in Venezuela. The 2006 intelligence community assessment that Smartmatic's ties to Venezuela posed a national security threat was based on solid intelligence regarding Venezuelan government intent to influence U.S. politics and evidence of Venezuelan manipulation of their own electoral systems. So hold on. If I'm reading this right, the Smartmatic technology systems that we use for electronic voting came from Venezuela, and we just used that? Why would we use voting machines from a communist dictatorship country? Why would we do that? That seems so fucking dumb, dude. This assessment led to U.S. government action forcing Smartmatic to divest its U.S. operations in 2007. Redacted reporting indicated that electronic voting systems contained vulnerabilities that would theoretically be exploited by sophisticated actors with insider access. However, while the intelligence validated significant concerns about foreign-linked voting technology vendors, it did not definitively confirm the large-scale electronic fraud was successfully executed in specific Venezuelan elections, with CIA's baseline assessments maintaining that other factors better explained electoral outcomes. The reporting on advanced techniques like Redacted provided concerning insight into alleged Venezuelan government capabilities and intent, but came from limited sourcing. I just think that you should probably not have electronic machines dealing with voting. I had been using the electronic voting machines in Georgia. When I came up here, we had a paper ballot that we filled in with a pencil. I think that there's absolutely no reason that votes should not be finished counting on the day of the election. Even if it goes a few hours later than expected, That's still way better than whatever the fuck kind of janky-ass system we have going on now. The summary focuses on what intelligence community reporting established regarding Venezuela's intent and capabilities to manipulate voting machines, both domestically and potentially in other countries. It is not a comprehensive reassessment of all available intelligence on this topic, but rather a summary of key findings from select intelligence documents spanning 2004 to 2020. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like I remember this being the case, but I could be misremembering. Isn't Venezuela one of the places where some, like, Middle Eastern country was, like, an ally with them? Was it Iran? Or am I thinking of Russia? I know Russia's not Middle Eastern, but I can't remember. But they were allied with someone else who was also an enemy of the United States. And it just seems like, if they're thinking Venezuela's commie dictatorship could do this on their own, their allies could be much more meddlesome as well. It's both? It's both. Okay. Russia, Iran, and China. Huh. Huh. Thank you, chat. We yoinked their leader. True, he deserved the yoinkening. Venezuela government interest in election manipulation, redacted intelligence sources between 2004 and 2020 reported that Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez and his successor, Nicolas Maduro, demonstrated sustained interest in manipulating electoral outcomes through electronic voting systems. In April 2004, intelligence reporting indicated Chavez stated his objective was to prevent the re-election of a sitting U.S. president, suggesting intent to influence U.S. domestic policies. This finding was part of the basis for the intelligence community's 2006 assessment that Smartmatic's acquisition of U.S. voting systems company Sequoia posed a moderate threat to U.S. national security. Redacted, prior to Venezuela's 2012 presidential election, Redacted reported that Chavez's intelligence service, including General Directorate of Military Counterintelligence, and the Bolivarian? I wanted to say Bolivian, but what is Bolivarian? Where's that? Bolivarian Intelligence Service worked with the National Electoral Council and Smartmatic to develop plans to manipulate election results using pre-programmed voting machines. Redacted reported that these plans called for deploying altered machines to approximately 300 voting centers in traditionally pro-Chavez areas to ensure victory by approximately 1.5 million votes. Following the election, with Chavez won by approximately 1.6 million votes, sources reported that Chavez congratulated his team for successfully implementing the manipulation plan. Now, you see, reading that makes me think of, like, the weird shit that happened with the like, number of votes in the 2020 election, where you just had that, like, vertical fucking line on the Democrat side. And I think the same thing happened with that based guy running for mayor in LA. I forgot his name. Didn't that also happen with, like, his fucking chart? Redacted in September 2020, Redacted reported that Venezuela, Redacted, had developed detailed technical plans to manipulate the December 2020 National Assembly elections, using what were redacted. According to the reporting, the technique involved creating a second set of virtual machines that would replicate legitimate voting machine results, then substitute manipulated data while making votes appear to originate from legitimate machines. Redacted. Redacted CIA analysts assessed in 2006 that certain capabilities redacted regarding electronic voting manipulation were technically possible and operationally feasible. Specifically, redacted that voting machines in Venezuela had unspecified artificial intelligence components installed, were designed to alter vote tallies, could detect when they were being audited, and could provide printed receipts without registering, recording, or transmitting these votes. That's actually really thorough and really scary. They could detect even when they were being audited. That's crazy. While CIA analysts judged these capabilities were theoretically achievable, this assessment focused on technical feasibility rather than confirmation that such features were actually implemented. A 2013 CIA alternative analysis produced using the Devil's Advocacy methodology outlined a plausible scenario for how large-scale electronic manipulation could have occurred in Venezuela's 2012 election without detection. This analysis noted that Venezuela's electronic voting system was vulnerable to insider access, the centralized nature of the CNE's control over voting technology, and gaps in opposition monitoring capabilities. The report assessed that if such manipulation occurred, elections in Venezuela and other countries that are clients of the technology provider could be in doubt. However, CIA's baseline assessment maintained that no large-scale electronic fraud occurred in 2012. Based on pre-election polling data, absence of irregular voting patterns, and the opposition's concession. Why would the opposition conceding make any kind of a difference in whether the election was stolen or not. That seems like really silly. That seems incredibly silly. Redacted intelligence reporting consistently indicated that individuals with ties to Venezuelan intelligence services had access to election technology and voting systems. In 2012, sources reported that Chavez assigned an army communication specialist to the CNE to provide real-time access to election results. Reporting from 2012 also indicated that the CNE Information Technology Director, described as a confidant of the head of military intelligence with expertise in voting technology, was responsible for designing protocols for auditing voting software. These relationships provided potential pathways for manipulation of electronic voting systems. That's a lot of redaction. CIA note, redacted technique. Redacted in the September 2020 intelligence reporting on redacted plans provide the most detailed description of a specific technical approach to election manipulation. Redacted technique was allegedly designed to redacted replicate digital hash files sent to central vote counting database. Redacted mimic real voting machines that favored the ruling party. Redacted overwrite hash files of voting machines that favored the opposition. And redacted make altered votes appear to originate from legitimate voting machines. Redacted, this technique would, in theory, allow the Venezuelan government to monitor and adjust results in real time during and after the election. The reporting indicated that virtual machine technology would be employed to accomplish this manipulation while evading detection through standard audit procedures. The 2006 National Security Threat Assessment produced by the National Intelligence Council evaluated Smartmatic's acquisition of Sequoia voting systems as a moderate overall threat to U.S. national security interests. This assessment was based on several factors. Redacted intelligence indicating Chavez's intent to influence U.S. domestic policies and public opinion. Redacted reporting that the Venezuelan government manipulated Venezuelan national elections with Smartmatic's direct involvement. Double redacted intelligence that Smartmatic directors held credentials from Venezuelan intelligence services. Redacted open source reporting of corrupt relationships between Smartmatic and Venezuelan government officials. And redacted Smartmatic's and Sequoia's reported contracts in approximately 400 U.S. counties at the time. Redacted, the assessment concluded that Smartmatic's susceptibility to Venezuelan government manipulation makes the acquisition a potential instrument for Venezuelan officials seeking to undermine confidence in or manipulate the electoral process of the United States. This finding led to pressure from the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States that resulted in Smartmatic divesting its ownership of Sequoia in 2007. Redacted, in March 2018, Smartmatic ceased operations in Venezuela after publicly accusing the Maduro regime of inflating voter turnout by over 1 million votes in the August 2017 National Constituent Assembly election, figures that diverged from data recorded by Smartmatic's voting machines. This represented a break between Smartmatic and the Venezuelan government after years of the company providing electoral technology to Venezuela. Now see, if they knew that their goose was cooked in 2012, and they needed to, like, completely divest any sort of information, they were completely cooked in 2007, they divested ownership of Sequoia in 2007, then they had all the fucky-wucky nonsense in 2012 in Venezuela itself. It's kind of like you're on the dartboard, buddy. So them ceasing operations, to me, sounds like the next point of a communist plan, where they pretend that they're not doing anything anymore, but they go further undercover and continue their exploits in other areas instead of on their home turf. That's kind of crazy. Talked to a girl from Venezuela in 2020 who said that's what's happening in the US is exactly what happened in Venezuela when Maduro got elected. Voting stopped overnight and continued in the morning, like all the same stuff. I really hate all of the gaslighting, man. You know? I really wish liars could be punished in some way. China's cyber activities probably preclude to election espionage. Redacted, China is probing the presidential campaign for opportunities to tailor collection and gather insight on policy positions on US-Chinese issues. US policy on China is a long-standing high collection priority for Beijing, and Chinese cyber actors have conducted such activity in every US presidential election campaign since at least 2008, according to Redacted. So every single one of our elections since 2008 has had Chinese interference? That's kind of fucking crazy. And then, this looks like that shitty-ass anonymous Twitter account. We are Legium lols. Redacted Chinese cyber actors are targeting U.S. presidential campaign information, probably to gather intelligence that enables future operations. Redacted. Since Redacted 2018, Chinese cyber actors known in the private sector as APT31 Redacted have targeted the personal email accounts of senior U.S. leadership, including officials in the executive office of the president and high-ranking officials in multiple executive branch organizations, Congress, and the federal judiciary. Redacted. Redacted since 2017, a separate Redacted has worked with the Redacted to enable more stealthy operations by identifying the email addresses of high-level U.S. officials, then requesting that Redacted obtain or crack the password for targeted accounts. Redacted. Redacted. As of the 2020 election approaches, the IC has detected Chinese state-sponsored cyber actors targeting the former vice president's presidential campaign, probably to gather intelligence that could enable future operations. The first instance this election cycle that we have seen them directly targeting a U.S. presidential campaign. China has also conducted cyber espionage against other U.S. election-related entities. Redacted. The IC assesses that China does not currently intend to covertly interfere to try to sway the outcome of the election, although this activity could enable such operations if Beijing made a decision to do so. So we detect that the cyber actors are doing things, but it's definitely not to sway the outcome. What else would the purpose be? What else would the purpose be? This makes me think every politician with a Chinese wife had been identified as an easy mark. Didn't we have a New York politician who was like with a Chinese spy as well? It's just like, this is kind of similar pattern recognition, right? You know, like how you're on the street and you see certain people and you're like, oh, I don't want my purse stolen, I'm gonna cross the street, right? This is kind of like if you're a politician or a high-ranking government official and a Chinese woman starts hitting on you, you should probably walk away, right? Like... Redacted, as of May 20th, APT31 actors had sent spear phishing emails containing tracking links to the Gmail accounts of staffers associated with the presidential campaign. Redacted, on June 4th, Google announced that APT31 was targeting the campaign. Redacted, Google and the FBI both briefed campaign officials on the Chinese cyber operations shortly after discovering the activity. Google officials have publicly stated that the spear phishing attempts were unsuccessful. Redacted. Redacted, during the past year, Chinese cyber actors have collected U.S. election-related information from U.S. voter databases, a polling data company, political and nonprofit organizations, fundraisers, and advisory organizations for political campaigns. Redacted. Redacted, APT31's method of sending tracking links suggests that the Chinese operators are mapping out the target network for follow-on approaches, possibly including tasking campaign staffers' email accounts in the Chinese military signal intelligence system for collection. Tracking links collect metadata such as internet activity and system information that the operators can use to exploit the accounts and identify other targets of interest. Redacted knowledge of a campaign official's operating system and software would allow cyber actors to determine whether they could quickly exploit known vulnerabilities or if they needed to develop malware to gain undetected access to the victim's machine. Redacted, if a target opened a spear phishing email with a tracking link, even without clicking on any links, it would confirm an active account for the cyber actors, potentially narrowing the target set for future redacted operations. This is kind of like how people say when you get like spam texts or spam calls, never reply to them, never try to do like the no to unsubscribe or stop sending messages, never touch those emails, just immediately report it as spam. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy. This whole section is redacted. Produced jointly under the auspices of the Chief of Analysis, Redacted, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the NSA. More redacted. That was that we just read. See a CISA report from July 13th, 2026. SLTT election officials face difficulties in applying security updates to election software. From around 2019 to 2024, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency conducted a set of technical and operational activities to evaluate the security of certain U.S. election systems. These activities, all carried out upon the request of system owners and operators, included direct examination of election-related software, penetration testing of state, local, tribal, and territorial networks, and incident response operations for intrusions into election systems. Through these activities, CISA developed a strong understanding of the vulnerabilities that, at the time of testing, affected select election-related software products and network environments evaluated by CISA. In every software product or election-related network in which CISA identified a vulnerability, CISA notified the owner or operator of the vulnerable product or network and encouraged them to mitigate the vulnerability. Boomers are most vulnerable to yellow fever. You see, I don't know about that, right? Because every time I bring up how passport bros are dregs of society, bottom of the barrel, should be completely fucking ignored, everyone wants to push back about, but Kirsche, all hope really is lost. White women really are garbage. And it's like, congratulations, you've accepted the communist programming. CISA's findings highlight the reality that election-related software, like all complex software, contains vulnerabilities that require timely remediation. While past partnerships with election vendors enabled early identification of security weaknesses prior to product release, structural constraints in the certification ecosystem significantly limit vendors' abilities to patch systems quickly. For example, some government election systems certification regimes require that no patches be applied for months before an election. These limitations, combined with inconsistent vulnerability disclosure practices, result in election systems being deployed with known and unpatched security issues. I can understand the room temp IQ based thinking of yeah, there should be no updates to software for several months before an election happens because someone could sneak in something at the last minute. But then also, if you establish that nothing can be updated several months before the election, people can just put those vulnerabilities in during the last patch cycle before these months that nothing's allowed to happen in. It just seems like a little bit of forward thinking might have maybe prevented that. Beyond software quality, CISA's assessments repeatedly show that the IT networks operated by SLTT election offices lack cybersecurity hygiene. Many election vendor threat models assume strong network segmentation and isolation of election systems. However, in practice, election infrastructure is often accessible from general enterprise networks, creating opportunities for lateral movement by adversaries who compromise email systems, user workstations, or other information technology assets. Weak identity management, limited logging, and insufficient segmentation exacerbate the risk that a cyber threat actor could access or disrupt mission-critical election IT components. I remember one of the security things we had at my insurance job, because when we handled users' personal information, so when we got access to things not just their name and address and phone number, but their social security number and their banking information, we had to have a certain level of clearance to access that. And so we would have that security pop up for changing our password for our account every 2 weeks. And I think forcing people to change their passwords that frequently actually makes things less safe. Because people are going to put precedence on, can I remember this password, not is this password secure? So the rapid overchange of passwords actually creates more of a security issue than if you were to leave it there for longer. Password 12345, yeah, exactly. Exactly. We've known that in IT security since the 1990s, and yet companies still make you do it! Overall, the security of US elections is shaped by the interaction of three major factors. 1, software vulnerability management constrained by outdated certification regimes. 2, inconsistent transparency from election system vendors on vulnerabilities and patch status. And 3, the cybersecurity immaturity of many SLTT networks responsible for hosting election systems. Addressing these challenges requires coordinated action across technical, policy, and regulatory domains. This report provides detailed analysis and proposes targeted recommendations to strengthen election infrastructure security and enhance public trust in the resilience of the nation's election infrastructure. Classic working as designed. What a system does is its purpose, right? So that's the only thing you can really take away from this. And especially as they were talking about these voting machines, back in the 2000s? It was 2007 when they were okay, let's maybe not use these ones partnered with Venezuela and let's use a different one. But it's technology was so young at that point, and we still had a decently high trust society, so nobody was just we gotta look out for those filthy fucking commies. We gotta look out for these people trying to usurp our elections. I think that if you're going to be an elected official, if you're going to be a politician, if you're going to work in government, you no longer have the luxury of accepting good faith as a baseline. You must live in the paranoia and hope it does not mind break you. Because otherwise you're doing a immense disservice to the people you're supposed to represent. From around 2019 to 2024, CISA evaluated the security posture of election entities through multiple mutually reinforcing technical activities. These included, upon the request of relevant entities, direct source code and binary analysis of election software, protocol and interface assessments, penetration testing, and red team operations against SLTT networks, and response operations for cybersecurity incidents affecting those same patterns. Together, these activities provided CISA with a multi-layered view of vulnerabilities across the software supply chain, deployment environments, operational workflows, and adversary targeting trends. That's kinda nuts. In every case that CISA identified a vulnerability in a software product or election-related network, CISA notified the owner or operator of the vulnerable product or network and encouraged them to mitigate the vulnerability. See, you're a government entity, and you're advising people who own electric equipment used in our elections. It shouldn't just be encouraged to mitigate the vulnerability. It should be, you mitigate this or you get thrown in jail for the rest of your fucking life. That should be what is said to these people. CISA correlated vulnerability data, advisory tactics, techniques and procedures, threat intelligence, configuration weaknesses, logging gaps, and the systemic architectural issues across numerous assessments of SLTT entities. The agency's analysis helped identify security regressions in which modifications to software result in the re-emergence of previously resolved issues, recurring ineffective or harmful attempts at solutions and conditions that enabled adversaries to exfiltrate sensitive data, modify election artifacts, or degrade system availability. Even with some of the people who tried to close these security loopholes, prior loopholes would pop back up once one was closed. So it didn't even matter, so why are we using these machines? The intent of this report is to draw from CISA's assessments in the 2019 to 2025 timeframe to present an assessment of the security of U.S. election systems, covering not just voting and registration-specific software components, but also the broader enterprise environments in which they operate, to include things like email accounts and other office IT assets. The document concludes with recommendations designed to help policymakers and technical leaders meaningfully reduce systemic risk and strengthen public confidence. Throw the systems out. No more electronic voting. That's how you strengthen public confidence. Direct software examination, static and dynamic analysis. From 2019 through 2024, CISA partnered with Idaho National Laboratory on the Critical Product Evaluation Program to conduct direct technical assessments of election software. In many cases, prior to the public release of such software, these assessments occurred only upon the request of the relevant software vendor and included automated and manual static source code review, binary fuzzing of parsers, media handling components, and data import modules. What's fuzzing, binary fuzzing of parsers? I don't even know what that means. I don't know what that means. Throwing random data at inputs and seeing what happens is fuzzing. Oh, it means providing a bunch of random crap data and seeing how it crashes. Interesting. These assessments occurred only upon the request of the relevant software vendor and included automated and manual static source code review, binary fuzzing of parsers, media handling components, and data import modules, cryptographic implementation analysis, e.g. misuse of PRNGs, I don't know what that is, poor key handling, interface security testing, including authentication, authorization, and API boundary validation, supply chain dependency reviews, including third-party libraries, OS packages, and firmware where applicable, and dynamic analysis in hardened and universal runtime environments. While vendors generally viewed the program as valuable, the model created disincentives for transparent, industry-standard vulnerability disclosure. Vendors benefited from private remediation prior to market release, but the downstream ecosystem, SLTT administrators, risk managers, and external researchers did not receive clear vulnerability histories or patch transparency. The program was therefore retired in 2024 based on stakeholder feedback, and final reporting concluded in 2025. That's not good. You don't want to listen to stakeholders. Stakeholder bad, communist nonsense, shareholder good. So why in the fuck would you listen to what stakeholders were saying? Why would you get rid of this, like, vulnerability detecting program thing? That just seems stupid to me. CISA's analysis of the critical product evaluation reports confirms that election software, like any complex system, contains a spectrum of vulnerabilities, including input validation bugs, insecure deserialization, insufficient logging, race conditions leading to unpredictable results, insecure crypto primitives, and privilege escalation paths. Many vulnerabilities were remedied quickly by vendors before release. However, CISA did not independently validate whether production builds destroyed in SLTT environments incorporated all fixes. Well, that also seems like there's no point, right? That's like I said earlier, if you're gonna go to someone and be like, hey, fix these securities, it should be fix these securities or we throw you in fucking jail. Like, you shouldn't pussyfoot around when it comes to election integrity, which is why we also should have the fucking voter ID bullshit many, many years ago. Name one pen and paper vulnerability. If you have a retarded child who's over the age of 18 who still lives at home because they need 24/7 care, or if you have a disabled parent, you could fill out their paper ballot for them and pretend it was them who did it. But that's like, that's you know, much smaller scale, I would say, than what electronic voting machines allow you to do. Dog ate my ballot.